This is something that's really interesting, and I especially love talking about with young people. When I taught high school, they did not want to hear this message that when it first emerged, capitalism was this like punk rock, enlightened, like the freest form of an economy out there. Capitalism was the enlightened response to the like authoritarian absolutism, whatever, of mercantilism. So if you remember from your history class, we're talking 1700s, Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations, which incidentally was published in 1776. And I just find it really interesting and symbolic that both capitalism and the United States were born in the same year. But up until that point, the economies, at least in Europe, ranged from absolute monarchies, right? Like Spain, like everything's for the crown. Any gold you find over in the Americas is for the crown or the church, right? And so there's no concept of like private property. Like, yes, maybe you get an encomienda or something like that and you get a lot of wealth, but ultimately you know that you got it from the crown and it can be taken by the crown. The like freest economies that we saw in Europe would be probably in the Netherlands, right? They had the first stock market, that sort of thing. But for our purposes, for kind of the American colonies, we can focus on England, which did have a Bill of Rights that established the right to private property, right? And so business owners felt somewhat safe and protected by this rule of law, that they could start a business, they could invest in it, that all of that wealth that they made was theirs and wasn't just going to be stolen by the crown. Of course, they're going to pay taxes and other things are going to happen, but still, it encouraged some entrepreneurialism that we didn't see in other places. Now, they call it the Protestant work ethic, but it's not. It's because they had the protection of private property enshrined in their law. Anyway, they still, though, in England had mercantilism, right? This concept that the mother country is kind of the spoke of the wheel and that everything runs through her. And so you go out to the colonies and say, you can grow this, you can't grow this, you can only trade with us, you have to sell it at this rate, you have to pay these taxes, you can only buy these products from us. You know, a lot of the things that led us to our American Revolution. So if you think about it that way, it's kind of beautiful. In its purest form, capitalism was this idea of like, what if anyone could become wealthy? What if you didn't have to have inherited wealth? What if it wasn't just about your land and your title? What if literally anyone with a good idea and a work ethic and whatever and some good luck could become wealthy and influential? And of course, the United States, I think, is the one that puts that philosophy to the test the most. Of course, by 100 years into our country, by the mid to late 1800s, we were starting to see some cracks in the system because, of course, capitalism can be this free and fair and beautiful thing for like one generation. But what happens when now you have inherited wealth that was produced through capitalism? And this is, of course, what some, guys over in Germany with big bushy beards started to predict, is like what happens when the capitalists become essentially like the feudal lords. And it's no longer this like free, enlightened, individual, like anyone can make it sort of economy.